Hello students, we will come to part 4 of our works of Mies van der Rohe, and last time we were talking about the Lakeshore Drive apartments. It was the first high-rise apartment building and it embodied the minimalist vision of Mies van der Rohe, his concept of a skin and bones architecture. Today we look at one of the most famous houses of the 20th century called the Farnsworth House in Illinois by Mies van der Rohe from 1946 to 1951. This house was designed for a client called Dr. Edith Farnsworth. In 1951 it was completed and it had an iconic glass, it was an iconic glass and steel weekend retreat, very simple, and it completely embodied the principle of minimalism of Mies van der Rohe and less is more. If you would like to study just one building in order to understand the basic concepts and design philosophy of Mies van der Rohe, all you need is to study the Farnsworth House. In one nutshell, it teaches you everything about the architecture of Mies van der Rohe. This site and setting, it was located on a floodplain near a river and was surrounded by a natural landscape all around it. So in a sense, it's something like the falling water, but we'll just see a little ahead how it was different from the falling water. It was also a response to nature, just as Wright had done. This was also in harmony with the surrounding landscape, but the way Mies approached it versus the way Wright approached it, we look at that. The house was raised about 5 feet 3 inches off the ground because of the floodplain and on these steel columns as you see here. In fact, this picture shows you the site has been flooded. Now, the steel frame was painted white. There are two things you must you would find very interesting. There are only two colors you find in Mies's work. Either you will find he works with white or he works with black. In between, Seagram is bronze, like whiskey color, partly because Seagram company was a whiskey distillery company and the color was a representation of that. Barcelona Pavilion has chrome plated columns, so there is a little bit of difference, but generally he follows the white and black. And one of the reasons why he did white here is because we later on see, he wanted to make the minimum disturbance to the natural colors around him. He wanted to have a completely white background of the house surrounded by the intense varying colors of nature around it. There were glass walls all around it, just had 8 I-section steel columns on which the house was standing, and there was travertine stone for the flooring and the steps. Again he uses travertine here, and the only enclosed volume is this central wooden core, that you see here, that has the washrooms, and on one side that provides access to an open kitchen. This is the structural frame that you see of the Farnsworth House. It's just I-section beams and columns on which the entire structure has been put together. So just two elements, the vertical wide flange I-beams or vertical I-flange, we can call them I-sections rather, as columns that are directly going into the ground, and the floor and the roof are these two horizontal planes that you see suspended between these wide flange I-section columns. Now all the technical installations of the building are hidden. Now that is very interesting because the house is completely glass, transparent from all sides. So the technical installations are embedded within the inner box, the wooden box that he has created for the washrooms and the kitchen, open kitchen. The roof slab directs the water to a downpipe and that passes through the center of the building, and the floor slab has coils for underfloor heating, something that Wright also used to do. There is an open plan interior, there are no walls, there are only zones. So we are again looking at the concept of a universal space. The idea that he had got in the Crown Hall, he carried it also in the Lakeshore Drive apartments to some extent, he brings it here again in the Farnsworth House, and to an extent was also already there in the Barcelona Pavilion. The space is universal, flexible, alterable. Here the kitchen, living, sleeping are arranged freely. Of course the kitchen is fixed at one place, all the other spaces that you see here are flexible and alterable. It's a floating box concept. There are no traditional rooms in this weekend house. The furniture is a part of the architectural composition. Because of the minimal design with open uninterrupted spaces, only glass walls, and then you have the furniture within it, the placement defines how the space was to be used. So, whether it's a dining area, living area, the bedroom area, all of it could be configured based on the desire of the client. So, the entire house is one open volume elevated on these steel columns. There are no load bearing walls inside, just a central wooden core having the kitchen, bathroom and the storage. The living, dining, sleeping areas flow into each other and there are no fixed boundaries. The house is so reductive that it can be read almost like a diagram. It is so simple. So, the minimalism of Mies van der Rohe's design carries over into the drawing itself. The drawing itself is minimal, almost like a diagram. All that is unnecessary has been eradicated from this weekend house, just leaving the structure. Now, to compare Corbusier's work with Mies van der Rohe, in Corbusier's work, in his very famous Villa Savoy, 1928-1930, he used the RCC frame, Mies used the steel frame. Corbusier developed the Villa Savoy based on the domino system, in which the columns are placed within the plan. That emphasizes the horizontal continuity of the space. So, you see the pilotis are on the inside of the plan. In the case of Mies van der Rohe, the columns are on the outside of the plan, and thus they frame the building from the outside. So, very interesting to see the slight varying differences in the approach of both of them, and of course, the major difference of the structural frame itself. In majority of the buildings, Corbusier worked with RCC. One last building we saw later on, Pavilion Le Corbusier in Switzerland, that was in glass and steel, if you remember my earlier presentation. Now, when we compare Wright and Mies van der Rohe in their approach to nature, Wright completely immerses the falling water in nature, whereas Mies frames nature for us to observe from inside. The house that Mies created, the Farnsworth House, is completely separate from the natural landscape around it, and it's completely encased in glass. So, when you are inside, you observe the nature all around you, but you are standing separate from it. In the falling water, you are actually immersed in the natural landscape around you. The falling water is a part of the landscape and blending into it. The house is on a waterfall and it is made of natural materials from the site. Farnsworth House, on the other hand, is not made with natural material but with steel and glass. It's minimal, transparent pavilion that stands apart from nature but is fully experienced. Nature is fully experienced through the glass wall. So, two different approaches to be able to enjoy nature, falling water and the Farnsworth House. Now, in his relationship with nature, the glass walls dissolve the boundary between the inside and outside, and certain times when you see, for example, when it has snowed, the house becomes a complete part of the surrounding landscape. It appears to float in the landscape. Seasonal changes become a part of the experience. Now, the same thing is also true for falling water. The falling water, if you look at some of the pictures closely, and you can go to online and see them, as the seasons change, the outer color of the house merges with the surrounding colors of the autumn. When it snows, how it becomes. So, the same thing can be said for Farnsworth House also. So, there is this connection with nature in both the houses. Not only that, even to certain extent in Villa Savoy, though it is not so much evident in the Villa Savoy. So, Mies said, nature should live its own life. We should not destroy it with the colors of our houses and interiors. We should try to bring nature, houses and human beings together, and that is why the color white, so that it does not intrude at all with the natural colors around it. And this is how Mies is you can enjoy nature while you are in the Farnsworth House. Now coming to again the idea of coming back again to the idea of the universal space, open, adaptable and free from the constraints of a program. We see that in the Crown Hall, we see that again in the Farnsworth House. The structure is the steel frame, the services, the utilities core are pushed to the edges or pushed to a point where the space flows uninterrupted around them. The occupant defines the function and use of the space over time. So there were different buildings Mies made where he applied the concept of the universal space. These are the 4 axonometrics showing that. We have the Farnsworth House, we have the New National Gallery in 1968, we have the Bacardi Administration Building in 1960 and of course the Crown Hall in 1956. In all of them he applied the concept of the universal space. Now the idea of the Farnsworth House glass box continued. Many more architects took to this idea and many more glass boxes have been made after the Farnsworth House, and very interesting ones. Hopefully we will be seeing some of them in a series called Places to Live. One of them is Casa de Blas in Spain by Kemper Beza in 2002. There is the Glass Pavilion by Steve Herman in 2010 in the US. There is the very famous Philip Johnson's glass house, which was built in fact a couple of years before the Farnsworth House. Now how could it imitate the Farnsworth House if it was made before? Because the drawings of the Farnsworth House are already there, and I believe that Philip Johnson himself acknowledged the impact or the influence of the Farnsworth House on the design of the glass house. Interestingly, Philip Johnson worked with Mies van der Rohe in the designing of the Seagram Building. I believe he did the interiors of the Seagram Building. Then there is this house in Japan in 2008. Again, in all of them you find the fundamental concept of the Farnsworth House. You have and then you should see the expanse. These pictures that I am showing you, these examples I am showing you are also showing you not in one place but in all over the world these houses have been made. You have them in Spain, in the US, in Japan. Again in the US you have them in the you have the glass house in the Netherlands, a mirror house in Italy, Casa Bibi in Chile. You have again this villa in Netherlands and this Kemper Beza house, Casa del Infinito again in Spain. So number of architects, number of countries across the world where this glass house became an example for many more architects to follow from there. So that has been one of the greatest contributions of these great masters, that many people have taken the ideas that they have experimented with, that they have come up with, and many more projects have been built using their concepts. That is why Frank Lloyd Wright, Corbusier, Walter Gropius, Mies van der Rohe, I know I am boring you by repeating it again, these 4 are considered the great masters of 20th century architecture because of the concepts and ideas they brought through their buildings. In conclusion, the Farnsworth House is a touchstone of minimalist and modernist style. Like I said, you can understand most of all the architecture of Mies van der Rohe through this one project. It has influenced countless glass houses, for example Philip Johnson's glass house, which we will be looking at again, all over the world and by many architects, but it has also been criticized for being impractical. But we must understand one thing, this is not to be a regular house, this is just a weekend house. There is a lack of privacy and overheating concerns. So these issues are there, for which this house has received some critical points also. Now let us come to the pioneer of the tall span. Of course, Lakeshore Drive was also a tall span building. It was about high-rise living in an urban setting. Seagram Building is about corporate modernism, and it is an example of the import of modernist ideals from Europe to the USA. It is also linked with Mies's earlier studies of skyscrapers in the expressionist period, when he designed those 2 glass and steel glass skyscrapers, but he himself never could execute them, but he did it finally in the Lakeshore Drive and most of all in the Seagram Building. It embodies Mies's dictum, less is more, make it less, less and less. How can you keep on eradicating, deducting more and more elements so that only the fundamental elements remain? Now, the Liver House, which was built a little bit earlier than the Seagram and is just across the road from Seagram, was famous in the 1950s, Seagram in the 1960s, but Seagram established the basic form of the corporate tower for years to come. There were certain ideas that even led to the changing of the New York zoning regulations, zoning resolutions because of Seagram. It was planned for the Seagram's distillery company. It was 160 meters tall, 38 stories tall, much copied, but it has never been matched in its refinement. It is generally recognized to be the finest example of international style skyscraper. The exterior again, he uses luxurious materials. It has in fact got dark bronze tinted glass panels, and these I-beams that you see as he used in the Lakeshore Drive apartments, the I-beams were in steel. These I-beams are made in bronze. That has been attached to the mullions, just as he did in the Lakeshore Drive, to emphasize the vertical rise of the facade. This sophistication, this material refinement is what made it a masterpiece of skyscraper design. So the architectural philosophy again, less is more. There is minimalism, order and structural clarity, and this rational form with refined detailing, this monumental simplicity. Two pictures, the daytime, in the night. This, see how expressive the structural frame is, how he has expressed the structural frame on the outside by the way the I sections have been placed, by the way the overall facade has been composed. You can see the beauty of the bronze tinted glass, and there is a rational use of repeated building elements. Again, this entire building has got a very strong axial symmetry. I was led to compare it with the Taj Mahal, and here you find the central axis in the Taj Mahal. You have the green spaces on either side, there is a water body running in between, and then you have the Taj right on the central axis. In the case of the Seagram, again you have a central axial symmetry, just like the Taj, which has been placed right at the back of the site. The Seagram also has been made at the back of the site, leaving behind this vast plaza in front, like the open space in front of the Taj. But in this case, the water bodies are on the side, the plaza leading to the building is in between, and there are trees also planted on either side. So amazing central axial symmetry, comparing it with Mughal architecture. This is how this got a very strong central axis in both the buildings. So beside this rigid axial symmetry, the plan is based on a 8.5 meter grid, and it is placed on the rear of the site. The building is set back about 30 meters from the street, and the forecourt, as you see in this picture, there are these two reflecting pools on either side, and this has got this green marble bench provided on either side. Every single element that he adds to the overall finish of the building, and also gives it a very strong central axis. It has got these minimalist green marble benches, like I said, and the entire plaza is again made of travertine stone. It is cladded with pink travertine stone, and there are trees flanking on either side. This is how the bronze clad pillars are. Alternating bands of these are the bronze plating in between, and in between them is the whiskey brown tinted glass in between this bronze plating. These are the views of the plaza, and here you see from the plaza looking towards the Liver House. Now, the architectural philosophy that I want to focus on a little bit here, and we will come back to this when we look at some other buildings, is the idea that a shift from decorative to functional aesthetic, something which was called as tectonic symbolism by Kenneth Frampton. What is it? The brown eye sections that you see here in the plan, and you see here in the picture of the bronze eye sections actually highlight the curtain walls modular system. This curtain wall, this glass at 5 feet intervals, these mullions have been provided. Now, Mies's belief was in visual discipline, in repetition, and by providing this kind of eye sections in front of the mullions, he was emphasizing the verticality of the building. So, this in fact was not a structural member, it was an aesthetic member, but it was also symbolic of how the building has been put together. It is a new form of ornamentation, but not like the ornamentation we have seen before. The curtain walls at that time had actually become thin and flat and abstract. Mies just introduced this depth and vertical rhythm by providing these eye sections. So, the same, if you want to compare between the Seagram and the Lakeshore Drive, both of them have these applied beams. It stiffens each of the bays also, but it also provides a surface texture, relieves the monotony in the building. So, this is how the articulation, the tectonic articulation takes place. On the left side in this panel, you see a flat smooth curtain wall as was normally being made at the time. There is no tectonic, no constructional articulation, so it becomes a very neutral and featureless facade. On the right side, something which Seagram has and Lakeshore Drive have is a curtain wall with these vertical mullions, and they provide a visual rhythm. They emphasize the verticality of the building, and though it is not structural, it plays a very important role in emphasizing the facade of the building. So, here I have just tried to compare what if the eye sections were not there. This is how Seagram would have looked somewhat. This is how it would have looked. This is how it looks today. And you can clearly see the kind of vertical, the way the eye section is provided, how they improve the aesthetic of the facade. It becomes somewhat dull, neutral without the eye sections being there, and when you provide it, the overall building, there is a new life in the building. And most of the glass and steel skyscrapers that were being built, the other three that I showed you, the Equitable Building, the UN headquarters, the Liver House, which were built around the same time as Lakeshore Drive, they did not have this kind of vertical articulation that Mies provided in both Lakeshore and Seagram. So, I will not go into the details. I have talked about these points, the rigid symmetry, the rectilinear grid, the elegant proportions, and thus it became the prototype of many modern skyscrapers. This is a picture comparing the two, how he evolved from the Lakeshore Drive to the Seagram Building, and there is also the material innovation in Seagram, very luxurious bronze facade, interior palette has got travertine, marble, bronze, glass. There is also custom furniture, something we have seen before in Mies's work, that he customizes the furniture, designs the furniture along with the building. This also has the Barcelona chairs, and it maintains a coherence in the overall design. There is durable, timeless materials that have aged beautifully. Of course, the building was quite expensive because he had used bronze eye sections, for example, instead of steel. Now, coming to the way the building has been placed on the site, it is very important because this became one of the very important features of this building. This building is known for two things, the tall building and the plaza. The building occupies only 40% of the allowable zoning envelope. Please remember that, as I had talked in my earlier presentations, 1916 zoning resolutions were at the time applicable in New York. That was leading to skyscrapers that were being built like wedding cake skyscrapers, setback skyscrapers. Though we find the difference in the Equitable Building, the Lakeshore Drive, but those buildings had a lot of setback in them, so they could go vertically straight up. What Mies did is, in Manhattan, in the midst of a very densely built environment, he created this plaza, and this would have been economically expensive because he provided a lot of free space and put the building right in the back. And because of this plaza came the 1961 New York zoning resolutions. I have talked about it in detail in my earlier presentation, and this was exchanging open space for higher floor area. If you were to provide these open spaces for the use of the public, and this particular plaza became very important for the people there, this very extensively used plaza. These spaces came to be known as POPs, privately owned public spaces. I have talked about it in slight detail before, and if you were to provide these spaces, then you were allowed to increase you were provided additional FAR in your building. But not all successors could match this quality of Seagram. So important was this building that it brought about a change in the resolution of the New York zoning resolution, that plazas can be provided with an incentive of FAR. But when other buildings tried it, not all of them succeeded as well. For example, we have this building, the Paramount Plaza by Emery Roth in 1970. This also has a large open space, in front, but rather than having a very free flowing usable plaza like Seagram had, this has got fountains, barriers and planters, and it prevents people from lingering here. Also, despite the size, it is a little more hostile to public use, it is more decorative than functional. So, the Seagram Plaza is one of the defining features of the Seagram building. Again, the use of limited elements throughout his lifetime, as I had told you in my earlier presentation, he continued to use steel, glass, stone, water. The interiors of the Seagram building. So, masterpiece of modernism, minimalism, luxury, urban sensitivity, a turning point in skyscraper design and plaza design, bringing about a change in the zoning regulations of New York. The other projects that he did, and we will be talking more about it, this particular project, in a presentation called Places to Gather. This project is the new National Gallery in the last years of his life in Berlin. It is again a tremendous example. In fact, the summa, the ultimate conclusion of his universal large span space, we find it in the new National Gallery, very similar in its fundamental concept to the Crown Hall. Then other buildings that were also close resemblance to Seagram building, the IBM building in Chicago in 1973, the Toronto Dominion Bank Tower by Mies van der Rohe in 1967. This is again the Toronto Dominion Bank Tower. You can see the tremendous similarity between this and the Seagram building. So, Mies kept on taking his buildings to perfection. This what I am saying right now is something that Corbusier had talked about. In one of my slides I had shown you how he had talked about standardizing elements, taking from Greek architecture how they identified the fundamental features and took them to perfection, from the Temple Paestum to the Parthenon. Then he identified the same thing in the automobile, how from the earlier Ford automobile to the later version, and then he identified the 5 points of a new architecture. If the standard elements are used and perfected over time, they become, we can keep on perfecting them over time. Now, who actually implemented that in his buildings? Mies van der Rohe. You find a lot of similarity between his works, starting from the Barcelona Pavilion to the Crown Hall, Lakeshore Drive Apartments, the Farnsworth House, the Seagram Building. He keeps on taking his ideas to perfection, working in two areas, the large span building and the tall span building, and fundamentally giving us what about the ideas of these two spaces. Then there is the Illinois Center in Chicago, and he passed away before it was completed. So, we have seen one of the greatest architects of the 20th century and his immense contribution to modern day architecture, particularly to corporate modernism. We will continue next time when we look at the works of Walter Gropius and we will connect it to his contribution, the design of Bauhaus and the contribution of Bauhaus itself, what all it led to with time. Thank you so much, and we will go to Walter Gropius next time.